Are you a fan of elite forces that can do their job like no other? Do you believe in being right, even if it doesn't make you many friends? Are you kind of an asshole? If so, then I think the Craftworld Eldar just might be the 40k army for you. The Craftworld Eldar were one of the first factions when Warhammer 40k was still in its infancy. In the lore, the Eldar, or Eldari, have been around since the beginning of the Warhammer 40k storyline, stretching all the way back to 65 million BC. They, alongside what would become the Orcs, an incredibly psychic race known as the Old Ones, fought the war in heaven against the Necrons and their star gods, the Kata. When the war was over, the Eldar found themselves in a position of galactic dominance. While there were a few threats they had to take care of, none could ultimately challenge them. The Old Ones were gone, the Necrons and Catan decided to have a nap for a few million years, and the Orcs were too primitive to really do anything to them. Having mastered the galaxy and no longer needing to really do any civilization building, since as far as they were concerned they were at the apex of the world, the Eldar began enjoying themselves. At first it was classy stuff, fine art, music, relaxing, all that fun stuff. You want to play a game of Asteroid? Go grab your spaceship and blow out some actual asteroids. But eventually, they got bored. You see, the Eldar experience emotion to a higher degree than other species, so eventually hanging out and vibing just wasn't enough for them. At first it was still minor stuff. Maybe have a couple day drinking parties, or a bit of the weed a little early in the day. Then someone brought up the cocaine-fueled death orgy and it all spiraled down from there. Fast forward to the year 30,000 AD or so, and this finally reached a breaking point. Their emotions and psychic power had been echoing throughout the realm of the warp, and after one night of excess too many, their empire disintegrated. Slaanesh, the chaos goddess, the chaos whatever the fuck of hedonism and excess was born. As she was born, she not only ate and consumed most of the Eldar's pantheon, but also the souls of the galaxy-spanning empire, destroying all of it in an instant. It is here that the story of the Craftworlds finally begins. You see, before everything went to shit, the Craftworlds were considered little more than glorified cargo freighters. The fact that they were the size of literal planets meant nothing to a species that had almost total mastery over both the physical and extra-dimensional worlds, surpassing even ancient humanity in spite of what imperial propaganda and fanboys will happily tell you. But because they had to travel between systems without the standard FTL method, the Warp Tribe, they could see how the Eldar were becoming more and more depraved and decided to get the fuck out while they still could. Because they ran away to the outer edges of the galaxy, they were spared the initial mess that caused by Slaanesh's birth, but now they had to contend with a galaxy hostile to them and an afterlife of eternal torment at the hands of the goddess they created for themselves. Now reduced to a shadow of their former selves, the Eldar of the Craftworlds rely on hit-and-run tactics and their mastery of psychic foresight to either guide the lesser species of the galaxy, attempt to rebuild what was lost, or simply survive in a universe that would like nothing more than to see them all dead. With all that exposition out of the way, why don't we talk about why the Craftworld should be your army for 40k? Well, for starters, let's look at these models. You see this shit? Look how sleek and elegant it is, how graceful their units are. Their Wraith units in particular are like ghosts given form to reap vengeance on the world of the living. With space lasers, of course. Honestly, I think they're the only faction in 40k that can be considered graceful. The human factions are too blocky and brutal, the Orcs are just a bunch of mentally handicapped barbarians throwing scrap together into working spaceships by accident, and the Tyranids are biological nightmares. Not exactly the face of elegance. The other technologically advanced factions aren't much contenders either, with the Necrons having more of a Terminator Egyptian theme going for them, and the Tau, while being fairly sleek themselves, are very mechanical with too many hard edges. Even the other Eldari factions can't match them. The Dark Eldar are too busy trying to jam as many spikes on their armor as possible, and the Harlequins live in a society. Beyond that, they're also the secondary protagonists of the setting behind the Imperium. They're almost always acting in ways that are born out of a need to keep themselves safe in a hostile galaxy. They don't wipe out planets because everyone on it is a filthy xeno or a source of food. They do it because they feel they need to do it to survive. You'll find exceptions, sure, but for the most part, the Craftworld's intentions are at least rooted in noble ideals, even if the ends might not justify the means. If nothing else, the atrocities they commit are functionally no worse than everyone else in the setting. Also, like the Imperium, you've got a good amount of faction choices to pick from among them. If you want the xenophobic militarists, then go for a Bieltan army. If you want fast-riding, free-spirited troops, then Saimhan is for you. And if you like having an army of the dead that actually knows what diplomacy means, then head on over to Yanden, the best Craftworld. The fact they date back to the setting's prehistory means they're also very involved in the plot. They had a massive part of the formation of the setting, and they usually make some kind of appearance in important events, even if it is minor. If nothing else, they're elves in space, so if you like elves, you'll like the Eldar. Magical, mystical, and technically right about almost everything they partake in. Now all that lore is fine and good, but how about the game itself? What would draw someone to them from a gameplay standpoint? Well, for one, their psychic mastery is arguably second to none. While they aren't throwing around fireballs like some overcompensating psychers, Thousand Suns. The Craftworlds can buff their forces perfectly. Their powers may not be flashy, and a +1 to hit might not sound that great, but when your basic Guardian unit suddenly turns a squad of Space Marines to pulled pork, you'll see that these elves don't fuck around. As a bonus, their Farseer units are a bit more resilient to perils of the warp if you fuck your casting up, which can happen because it's dice rolls. As for the rest of their units, they're probably pound for pound the best of what they do in the game for their particular roles. Fire dragons are going to melt armor like no one's business, howling banshees can slice guardsman level infantry into bloody ribbons, and even fairly reliably go against space marines if they're supported by a psyker. And their dedicated transport, the wave serpent, is one of, if not the best one in the game. Almost all their units are also fast as fuck, boy, and are able to cross the battlefield faster than any other. Don't think they lack for muscle either. While limited to their Wraith units, those dead warriors can take a hit and keep blasting away, and Wraith Blades in particular can carve up even melee-focused armies like Khorne to an extent. They even got a demon unit. An Avatar of Cain can wreck shop like few others. For one final benefit, unlike most Xenos armies, they can ally with other factions in the game. If you need a certain niche filled or just want a bit of variety in your army, you can slot in some Dark Eldar or Harlequin units with no real issues. It's pretty lore friendly to do so too, so no need to worry about anything on that front either if that's what you care about. You may have heard the good of the Craftworld Eldar, but I'm giving you more than that. Like Anthony Sullivan, it's a come for one, get another free event, and I'm going to tell you why you might not want to play the Craftworld Eldar. Starting off with the lore again, you will be playing a dying race on the back foot. Even a relatively strong one like Simon are going to be hard-pressed to win if they come against the majority of any of the other major factions' armies. Iandin's story is that they lost so many of their citizens they have to use mostly ghosts for their army because that's all they can afford to field. Eldar souls also have to be protected by a soulstone or they go straight to Slaanesh to be BDSM tortured for all eternity. Divine Vor is not a pleasant fate to know awaits you. Not only that, but their role is often that of the punching bag of the 40k universe. That demon unit I mentioned, the Avatar of Cain, the massive embodiment of the Eldar god of war given physical form, Games Workshop likes to have him slaughtered to show how strong a particular character is, and rarely is he given any dignity in these deaths. Same thing for their Psychers, the supposed best in the entire galaxy. Oh, we need to show how psychically powerful a new character is? Have him out magic a Farseer. Never mind that we did that for the last 20 new Psychers we introduced, it still means something to have them do that. Also, that influence you have over the 40k settings creation, yeah, it's mostly ruining for everyone else. The Eldar created the Eye of Terror, the bleeding asshole of reality where the warp leaks into the material universe, and this happened because they also created Slaanesh, who while he may prefer Eldar souls has no problem eating and corrupting others for her sick fun. They also probably could have gone out and killed the Necrons one by one while they hid in sleep mode, but just kinda didn't, so that's another point against them. And while the Craftworlds of the modern 40k setting may have the best of intentions, for Space Elves it wasn't that long ago they fucked everything up for everyone, maybe a generation or two at most. They're trying their best to fix it to their credit, but still. Speaking of, they're Space Elves. If you don't like elves, don't play Eldar. Even the most diplomatic of them are still arrogant and aloof, and they're so cryptic and vague with their words that many in-universe think they're just random agents of mayhem because of how disconnected their reactions seem to outsiders. They may technically be right, but dear God does not make most people want to beat the shit out of them any less. As for their army, you know how I said they're fast as fuck, boy, earlier? The downside is that if a stiff breeze kicks in, half of them are dead. Without cover or psychic buffs, the Eldar overall have one of the most fragile armies around. While some individual units may be worse off than them, in other factions it's usually the chaff whose role is to die either way, so better stuff can work its magic. Here it extends the Craftworld's elite infantry and to an extent their vehicles as well. You can somewhat avoid this especially if you pick Iandin because of their special rules, but if you don't strike first and hard, your guys will be taking losses. The only units that avoid this, the Wraith units, are slow as fuck and probably won't be getting anywhere fast enough to be useful without a transport. And while we're talking about unit usefulness, the Craftworld army is highly reliant on them being in the right place at the right time. Their specialization is so extreme that when caught in a situation they aren't tailored for, they will be hugely underperforming. Their speed does help with this a little bit for positioning, but if you don't go into a game with some kind of plan, don't be playing the Eldar. That's not a humble brag about my massive 50 IQ brain for playing them. I lost the game I played before Grandfather Nurgle blessed us with his gift this year. I'm just trying to say that you gotta know what you're doing to some extent if you want to play these units. They're a very hit or miss army. When you're winning hard, but if you're losing bad. Also, your models are gonna be ancient compared to other factions. The Eldar, like most non-Imperial or Chaos armies admittedly, have very few modern releases. Someone on Reddit made a handy chart for this. Let's look at the Space Marines, the poster boys. Looking good, plenty of releases. Now let's scroll over to the Eldar. Barely half the total releases the Space Marines had, and if we look at the past 10 years, it's almost pathetic. One final major issue, Finecast. I'll admit, before I got into the hobby, I thought people complaining about Finecast were just nerds complaining like we always do about things that were different, and it was just a minor change of the molding process that wasn't really that bad. But oh boy, was I wrong. This shit is bent out of shape. Look at this. It just looks bad in some places too. And it may just be a Model H thing, but look how flat some of these models are in their posing. Like literally flat. I don't mean boring, I mean flat. It's a shame too, because the models still look unique and follow the Eldar themes, but they're so outdated and rough they're falling behind their counterparts in other factions. Guess we'll just have to hope and pray 9th edition is kind to them. So there's the Craftworld Eldar for you. A lot of good, a fair bit of bad too. But they won me over in the end, and maybe just my love for elves, but I think they're a lot more worthy of attention than some may think and tell you. I've heard many don't appreciate the Eldar either because of their playstyle or because of their elfness, but at the end of the day, your army should only matter to you. Pick what you want to play. I hope I've brought you over to the Eldar side, and if not, then I'll be seeing you at the tabletop, you filthy son of... Then I hope you have a wonderful day and a happy new year. Take care out there, everyone. Stay healthy and stay safe.